Hey everybody, I am making this video from my car today because I have some time to kill and I won't have a ton of time later, and I wanted to get this out because it's fresh in my mind. It came up last night. I was on a Zoom call with Carlin's locals group. I'm a member of that. I recommend it to you highly. We have a weekly Zoom over there. I have one tonight, but that one is fantastic. The group of people is just wonderful. Anyway, one of the members brought up the fact that her daughter is in school, attending virtual school, and they were, hammering away. The teacher was hammering away about, bad things that historical figures did and how we have to talk about the bad things. And, it's so important to focus on this one was racist, or this one had racist views, or this one owned slaves. And I couldn't help myself. I mean, listening to the anxiety and the frustration and the just overall negative feeling this child was getting. The mom is conveying what she's going through and how she's not actually learning anything about history. She's not learning anything about the context of what was going on at the time, never mind the events. She's just learning about the personalities. You're like, oh, well, this person was flawed in this way and this person was flawed in that way. And I got so angry. I mean, usually we raise our hands and you take your turn because so many people attend. But I had to interject. I had to say something, and I'm now going to tell you, my audience, what I said to that group. It's irrelevant. It is irrelevant that George Washington was married to a woman who inherited slaves, and he did not instantly free them. It was not legally within his power to do so, or hers, by the way. But even if it were, the time period was one in which people owned other humans. That is horrific. It is bad. No one is going to defend it today. No one was really defending it all that much, except in very small circles. Even then, abolition started before the damn country. Abolitionists came into being, okay? Before the Declaration was signed, but you never hear about that. Okay, there were plenty of people, including some of the framers of the Constitution, who were deeply conflicted, who knew this was a problem, who knew someday it was going to come to a head. They had to figure out how to deal with it, but they had an entire economy that was based on this monstrosity. Kind of like we have an entire economy based on the monstrosity of public schooling, run by the government, and that it keeps so many people hostage now they can't go to work because they don't have the child care provided by their school system. So they're out of work, and the economy is hanging in the balance as a consequence. That's a monstrosity, too, in different ways. Do not sit there and tell me that I am comparing slavery to the public school system. Although conscripting people into paying for something they're not getting, or worse, that is abusing their children, it's definitely in the same universe. But because they're becoming slaves in their heads, they are. They're putting chains on their brains every single day. It's an abomination to own other humans. Nobody today would say otherwise, least of all me. So for the love of God, do not go and take my comments out of context. Do not do it. I will fight you. You know perfectly well what I'm saying. We today, the vast majority of Americans, the vast majority of the Western, rational, critically thinking world, and I say Western intentionally because there are plenty of people not in the West who currently enslave people, but we never talk about that. We think it's an abomination. It is 100% illegal, shameful, decried in every social circle, in every political circle. There is a tiny percentage of people who still hold views that might be okay to own a person. They cannot share these views openly because they are so frowned upon, okay? Nobody disagrees with that. You do not need to take that view, project it into the past onto people who may not have shared the current view or current ethos, who did not live in a time period where other people did, and who probably would have found it equally difficult to fight against the prevailing culture then that we find it to fight against the prevailing culture now. But more important than any of that, and I'm sorry I'm yelling, but it makes me so angry. More important than any of that is this is a smokescreen. They don't care. They're not concerned about the fact that George Washington had a view, or Thomas Jefferson had a view, or Andrew Jackson did mean things to the native tribes. Horrible things, in fact. No, they're not concerned about that today. They're not. Even those who go reparations, they're not concerned about that. That's not what they're interested in. They're not interested. They know perfectly well these things do not come into play today, and they'll lie to you and tell you, well, the policies and the Constitution that they wrote are forever stained. Hogwash. First of all, that very same Constitution that is allegedly forever stained has been amended multiple times. A very bloody war was fought to, in part, do that, to permanently change the laws of this country so you would never have slavery again in any territory under our jurisdiction. Ever. People died. One of the bloodiest wars in our history, if not the bloodiest, it may still be the bloodiest war in our history, fought on our own soil to change those laws. So don't you talk about forever stained. No. If you cannot have progress, don't call yourself a progressive. If you refuse to see the progression of history, if you refuse to teach it to others, you are doing no less than saying that there's no such thing as progress. There's no such reason. There's no reason to hope. There's no reason to change. There's no reason to think. There's no reason to do anything. But do as you're told right here, right now. You erase the decent parts of the past. You cherry pick the bad ones. You refuse to acknowledge progress. You act like it doesn't exist. You trash everything in the present that was ever even the smallest bit influenced. If you applied this standard to the heroes of their realm, well, we would have to throw out Martin Luther King Jr., wouldn't we? Because he cheated on his wife. We know this for a fact. We would have to throw out things that, Malcolm X, he did some fairly unsavory things as well. Let's just throw out all kinds of people. Can we have a chat about Angela Davis? Can we have a chat about the Weather Underground? Can we have a chat about the amount of pot that Barack Obama smoked? Can we have a chat about some of the Marxist, racist, nasty views that some very prominent Democrats have expressed? Oh, I don't know, like our current president? If we're going to go back in the past, can we be a little more recent than, 200, almost 300 years ago? Because it's irrelevant. They're dead. They're dead. Stop projecting your values into the past. We live now, and our kids have to live in the future. They have to build a future for themselves to live in which most of the people currently waxing all eloquent about the evils of the past will be dead. So, you either want them to be equipped with the tools to understand progress and how it happens and that human beings can be flawed and improve, themselves included, or you don't. Or your only interest is in demonizing your political enemies, filling students' heads full of hate and anger and envy, and killing any shred of hope they have for a different future. You want either apathetic or furiously angry people. That's it, because you don't engender hope by teaching somebody that George Washington should not be revered in any way, shape, or form because he had some views that if he landed in a time machine today would not fit today. Did it ever occur to you that if he were able to make that trip, he might arrive today and say, wow, what a better world. I'm really glad you all learned from our mistakes. I'm proud of the fact that you were able to find a way to move away from owning human beings. I see the error of our ways. Did that ever occur to you? Because I guarantee you there are grandparents alive today who have changed their views about a host of things, from racism to gay marriage, in their own lifetimes. So how about, instead of projecting negative into the past, you think that possibly a man as brilliant as George Washington or as Thomas Jefferson or any of the other people who were alive in those times could come to the future and apply the critical thinking skills that enabled them to build one of the most prosperous, free, forward-thinking countries on planet Earth and ever in human existence, that they could use that same skill to improve themselves. If you can't teach that that's even a possibility, if you can't teach things in context and look at the good with the bad, you're not a teacher. You're not only an indoctrinator, you're an abuser. You're an abuser, and what you're doing is wrong, and you're teaching something that is irrelevant. Knock it off.